Hey folks, welcome to the Kiss Storms Vegas show. Before we get rolling, stick around till the end because Brett and I have a wild prediction that you're never going to believe about what's going to happen in Vegas. And I want people to come back to this video if it happens. So stick around to the end. All right, folks, welcome back to the Contrarians. Brett, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Marco. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is awesome. If anybody's familiar with the history of the channel, Brett's been around probably since the beginning of when we started doing panels and stuff. And
I think I was actually like one of the first, like one of the first fan Patreon videos that you did, and we talked about music from the Elder.
yeah, we hit it off right away, and we started kind of doing a mostly Patreon exclusive series that was kind of like, I don't think we officially had a name, but it was kind of like a Kiss series that you and I were kind of doing exclusively for
Yeah,
Patreon. But we haven't seen you on the channel for a while. I think if folks can go back into the archives, you might see the last time we had Brett on the show was when we talked about the end of the road tour. So topic wise, it makes a lot of sense for Brett to rejoin us because there's some new news and
yeah.
topics going on in the Kiss universe. So let me just digest it or get out a couple of the Kiss facts or history of what's going on right
Oh
now, and
man,
then we'll get into it and we'll have a quick conversation about it. So if anybody's aware, Kiss wrapped up the end of the road tour in December 2023, and we had a conversation about that. It's in our archives, so you can see a video about it. Actually, Brett and his pop were there at the last two nights. I think Brett was at the second last night or something, but maybe not the last night.
yeah. My parents were at both nights. I was only at the official last night.
Right. So you can go back and hear us talking about the end of the road tour and our predictions about the future. So we'll see if they line up with what we're talking about right now. But
Yeah.
so
Oh man, I should have went back and watched the video to see what we had said.
So since then, actually recently within the past, I think month, some news had dropped on kissonline.com. So I'm on kissonline.com right now, and they dropped the news that Kiss is going to be doing a Vegas reunite celebration type kind of convention, Kiss cruise-esque thing on land in Vegas for like a whole weekend. They're going to be doing it near the end of this year, so it's going to be in November. And initially, they had only announced that Bruce Kulick was going to be there. Paul and Gene were going to be there. I think Doc McGee was going to do like a Q&A or something like this,
Yeah.
and that Kiss was going to be performing without makeup. Since then, now we have a new update, which was just announced maybe a couple of days ago. By the time this video goes up, maybe a few days ago, maybe a week ago, in that new update, we now have found out that Tommy Thayer will be joining the Unmasked Kiss show with Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. So I guess it actually doesn't specify if Bruce is going to be there. It says Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, joined by longtime lead guitarist Tommy Thayer. I'm assuming Bruce is going to go up and at least play an encore or something with them.
Yeah.
Black and Blue and Sebastian Bach are going to be added to the lineup. There's going to be a couple of Kiss tribute bands, etc. So they're adding more announcements and more festivities. They're probably giving us bits of announcements here and there to keep the momentum going. So there's probably
Yeah.
more to announce. I'd imagine Eric Singer's going to be there. No clue about Ace and Peter. So
Yeah.
what we're going to do is we're kind of just going to talk about this. So let me hand it over to Brett. So I just kind of told you what's happening at the end of the year. Brett, what were you thinking when this was announced, and what are your thoughts about it in general?
I want to say that I really want to say that I was surprised when I heard the news, but I wasn't. I really wasn't surprised. Um, and I remember, all my friends know that I'm a big Kiss fan and everything like that. And I had a couple people reach out and think like, oh man, and say like, oh man, like I'd be really pissed if I were you. You guys went to the last show, and now they're doing this. It's not even 2 years later. It's like a year and a half, or, whatever. And I said, I was like, I'm not surprised. I'm not mad. I think at the end of the day, I really don't care because with Kiss, it's all about wording. They always word things a certain way to be able to be like, oh no, we didn't say that. There's either a caveat or they can kind of go back on their word. I think the earliest example of that was when they announced the first farewell tour. And then a couple years later, it was like, oh well, no, that was the farewell tour from Peter and Ace. The band's still going on. And even when the end of the road tour ended, they were like, well, this is it for touring, and we're not going to do any shows in costume or makeup. And putting it that way, it obviously left the door open for like, okay, well, maybe they'll do something here, something there. Maybe they'll do a cruise. And like I was expecting them to come back out and do something. I didn't think it was going to be this soon, though. I thought at least maybe a couple of years, not, like I said, like a year. By the time this happens, it'll be, yeah, okay, yeah. So by the time this happens, it'll be 2 years almost since the last two shows. Um, yeah, like I said, I really wanted to say that I was surprised, but I wasn't. I just wasn't surprised that they had decided to do this. I did find it interesting that they only said Paul and Gene. And even still, like you had just said it, like they only said Bruce, they only said Tommy. It's kind of weird that they didn't announce Eric. I think that leaves a lot open because if there's one thing Kiss fans love to do, it they like to kind of speculate and like fantasy book things. So that leaves the conversation open of like, oh, maybe Ace and Peter are going to show up. I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be very shocked if that would happen, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, first off, I totally agree with you that I'm not surprised either because I was also paying attention to the words that were being said. Um, there's a couple of things that went through my mind. So the first thing was exactly what you said about the first farewell tour, then the second farewell tour, and now what they're doing, etc. One of the things that, if anything, makes me mad about this, I guess it would be that it kind of it gives the reason to the folks that are laughing at Kiss every time they say, "Oh, another farewell tour, oh, another
Yeah,
reunion," and they laugh. It gives them like a huge reason to continue to do that. It's like you're giving, you know what I mean? Like you're saying on one hand, you're going out on a farewell tour. Then, like you said, okay, that was the farewell tour to the original lineup, but why should we stop? Kind of thing, right? So it's like, okay, so
exactly.
there's your loophole, right? Then it's okay, now we're going to go on the end of the road tour, but really what this means is we're still going to be Kiss. We're still going to play shows. We might do a residency or we might do this or we might do that, but we're not going to do it in makeup anymore. We're not going to tour extensively anymore, whatever. So it's like there's another loophole. The thing that kind of bugs me is it's like, why? What's the point? Like I get it's making money, but what's the point of like creating your own loophole just to jump through it? You know what I mean? Like why are we even playing this game? Because it just gives people a reason to laugh at, oh, you're doing
Exactly.
this again now? Like
Yeah.
look at the news and you look at the comments online, it's like people are laughing at this. Other than like as a kid, like a lifelong Kiss fan, like I'd still love to go to this. I'd still love to celebrate. And they use words like or celebrating Kiss, the history of Kiss and stuff like this. It's like, yeah, I'd love to go, but like, why use certain language? And I get it, it's a marketing thing, but it is kind of like, yeah, I feel like Kiss fans are getting bilked whenever whenever Gene and Paul open their mouth. And I felt that way even in the end of the road tour. If you look at interviews leading up to the end of the road tour, we might have talked about this in the last video that we did. Leading up to when they started the tour, they were saying things like, "You don't know who's going to show up.
Exactly.
You never know what we're going to do. There's going to be surprises here and there, blah, blah, blah." As soon as the tour started, right away, they started saying like Ace and Peter are never going to be in the band, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, you've already sold a bunch of tickets now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Now you're saying it's definitive that they're not going to show up, kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? So that was something I didn't like about that tour.
Yeah. And all to add to that, another thing was like you they talked a lot. They talked it up so much, like you said, with, hey, anybody could show up. I think they were making comments about like they even made comments here and there about like stuff that they were going to be doing live in the set list. Oh, like, we might be playing some songs we haven't done in a long time. And then you go see it, and it's literally the same set list that you've seen on like the last three tours. Like that set list that I saw that night at the very last show, aside from maybe two songs, was the exact same set list I saw when I saw Kiss in 2019 on the first leg of the end of the road tour. or whatever tour that was in 2019.
Yeah, and I think they actually started off with a song that I thought was interesting that they were doing. I think it was from Hot in the Shade, maybe. It was a song that they don't normally do, and they quickly switched it out with Calling Dr. Love. I can't remember what song it was. I was kind
They
of
were doing
disappointed.
they were doing Hide Your Heart.
Hide Your Heart. It was Hide Your Heart.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, sweet, because I had tickets to see them. And I was actually looking forward to that
Yeah.
song. And then they switched
Yeah.
it out with Calling Dr. Love before they came to Toronto. And I was like, ah, whatever. And I think
Yeah,
they did the same set both times I saw them on that tour.
Yeah, like that was like the only, and I think maybe, see, I was gonna say like, oh, they did Crazy Nights, but up until that point, like Crazy Nights was a song that was like kind of consistently within the set list. Like I'm pretty sure when I saw Kiss, like maybe 2013 or 14, I'm almost certain they did Crazy Nights on that tour on that tour as well. So it's like it wasn't really, they were doing deep cuts in the mind of like the casual fan that's gonna show up and be like, that hasn't seen Kiss in 25 years or even longer. But to someone like me or you, you're like, oh, well, I don't want to hear this song. Like there's literally 50 other songs I'd rather hear than have to look it up for the 100th time.
So you already hinted at you don't think Ace and Peter are going to be there.
I don't think so.
See, I
think they're.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think they're going to do the same thing that they did with. Either one of two things are going to happen. They're going to do the same exact thing that they did with the End of the Road tour, where they said anybody can show up. Like I'm looking through the thing right now, the page, to see like if there's any kind of like verbiage or anything like that. And they're either going to do that, they're going to do the whole thing of like, you don't know who's going to show up, special guest, blah blah blah, or they're gonna try and do what they can to have Ace and Peter show up to make up for the fact that maybe they knew that they kind of, went about it the wrong way, did the wrong thing for the End of the Road tour. But then at the same time, it's like, as somebody that was at the last show, I would see that as a slap in the face, that you put in all this effort to get them to come out to the Vegas show instead of doing it in New York City. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to be there either. I think probably Bruce would be the ticket for anybody who's.
Yeah, and Bruce, it says special guest performer. Bruce is going to do the same thing he's done on the last 8 cruises or whatever it was, where he has his band and they do all the Kiss songs that Kiss doesn't do anymore, and it'll probably be the highlight of the weekend. Like I know when I went in 2018, Bruce Kulick performing was the highlight of the cruise for me, because they did so many great songs that you'll never hear ever again.
So I find it interesting here that they talk about special guest performances include Bruce Kulick. Expect the unexpected with surprise appearances, guest sets, tribute bands, and unforgettable moments that will make this weekend in Vegas a piece of history. Then in the next update, first thing it says is Tommy Thayer joins the Unmasked Kiss show. Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley will be joined by longtime lead guitarist Tommy Thayer for the Unmasked Electric show. It doesn't sound like Bruce is going to be joining them for the Unmasked Kiss show.
And that could change. They could have him come up for a song. When I saw them on the cruise and they did the Sail Away show, Bruce came out, I think, and performed like maybe 3 or 4 songs with them. He did 2 songs with Eric, Paul, and Gene, and then he came out again and performed with when Ace and Tommy were out on stage with them. So they could do something like that, But yeah, it's like it's the way they're wording it. It's like, tell us if it's going to happen. Like there's certain things you just don't have to like kind of keep secret. Like if Bruce is going to play with them, just say Bruce is going to play with you guys. Like it's, I think everyone kind of just expects that.
Right. I think they're using the expect the unexpected to drive those ticket sales. Like maybe it's going to be like the Kiss conventions, and maybe they're going to have Ace come out as a surprise, and maybe Peter's going to come out and we're going to see a reunion and this and that.
Yeah.
I think that's highly unlikely. I find Paul's demeanor about past members of Kiss seems to have soured more in recent years to like where he's probably in a place where he's really happy and he's just content cutting those guys out and not even dealing with them. They're probably going to make about the same amount of money whether Ace and Peter show up anyway. So why deal with what he expects to be a hassle to deal with them? I find it kind of unfortunate, but I don't foresee them being. Vinny, I think, is completely off the table. I think Paul has said that's completely off the table.
As someone who technically kind of worked with Vinny, no, they wouldn't want to. they wouldn't want to deal with him in the slightest bit. He's an absolute nightmare.
Would you ever deal with him again?
No. And I didn't even work directly with him. Like my father and a friend of his were the ones that worked alongside him, and he was just, and like, so I saw everything secondhand and I heard everything secondhand, but it was like he was an absolute nightmare to deal. He was an absolute nightmare to deal with.
So you wouldn't be interested in going to the Vegas show?
Despite everything that I've said and how I feel about it, I would absolutely go if I could.
What do you think are going to be the upcoming unexpected surprises? If you had to guess, do you think there's more announcements? Do you think we're going to find out?
There's definitely, well, so like you're not going to get as many announcements as you would get on, like, say, a Kiss cruise, because the Kiss cruise is like 5 days. So you have, and those shows go, and obviously, this is in Vegas, so time doesn't exist, time or space doesn't exist there. But it's like, on the cruise, you'd have shows as early as 9 o'clock in the morning, and then go as late as like 2, 3 in the morning. Like I remember there were bands that I was watching, 2 o'clock in the morning on the cruise. It was insane. It's only what, like 3 days maybe. So there's only so much they can do. I do think they're going to announce a couple more bands. To be quite honest with you, Sebastian Bach and Black and Blue aren't really two bands that are, that would be like, oh, I gotta see those. Even though I do think it would be cool if Tommy got up and played with Black and Blue. Given that's his original band and everything like that. So it's like seeing something like that would be cool. But I don't know like who else they could really announce. I don't know who like these other special guests would be aside from the obvious. You know what I mean? Eric Singer. That's
Anton Fig.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Wait, no, is
God, I hope he's still alive. Is that what you're gonna ask?
I have to look now.
But I don't think they're gonna pick, like, we're probably not gonna see like Judas Priest or anything that's gonna like maybe have a bigger splash than Kiss or Upstage Kiss.
Okay, he's still alive.
But see, like for me, Sebastian Bach and Black and Blue, that would have been a sweet opener for the Kiss End of the Road tour. Like that would have been awesome. Like, oh, cool, I get to see these opening acts like with Kiss rather than the magician or the painter or whatever that they had, which was interesting.
Oh yeah, you had that. I think when I saw them, I don't even think they had an opening band. That was the interesting thing about the last two shows. They had no opening band, if I'm not mistaken, and people were like, "Oh my god, like what's going to happen?" And there was nothing.
Right. So I think that what Kiss is doing is what they've been doing since, I think, post reunion. Because I think the reunion, it did really seem like, if you read in like their autobiographies and things like this, the 96 reunion really did seem like it was kind of like a restart, and everybody kind of seemed to be cohesive, like they were pre-Destroyer or pre the solo albums, I guess.
Yeah.
I think even Destroyer probably was when the band was more cohesive than they were later. It did seem like Gene and Paul wanted Ace and Peter to stay until the end. Like I really think I believed that at the time. Since then, with the farewell tour, I think that was a nightmare for Paul and Gene. And I know that they played with Ace and Peter separately after that. I saw them with Peter in 2003. Yeah,
you had that weird period where it was like okay, well, we're gonna be with Ace and Tommy. Nope, that's not working. Let's do Eric and Ace. Nope, that's not working either. And then they settled on Tommy and Eric. Yeah, that was a really weird time in the band.
Like, I always thought it was interesting. Yeah, I always thought it was interesting that Peter and Ace were so critical about Eric and Tommy, yet they both played with Eric and Tommy at different times. Like Ace played with Eric in 2001 and 2002, I think. And then Peter played with Tommy in 2003, 2004. For that Kiss Aerosmith tour, and then the Alive 4 Symphony show and all that stuff. Anyways, since that farewell tour is when I feel like Kiss has kind of started using the sleight of hand word, like the word you were saying, magic words, and using things, I don't want to say like trickery, but kind of bilking the fans a little bit. I feel like,
yeah, absolutely.
Is this cool? Yeah, it's cool. but it does feel like, as a Kiss fan, I've got a little bit of egg on my face again, especially when I read the comments and people, I see all the laugh
Yeah.
emojis and like things like this, like, yeah, haha. All the people that made fun of them for another farewell tour, another reunion,
Yeah.
they're just, they're really giving them more ammunition to be laughed at.
Yeah, I was in line for a show a couple weeks ago. I went to go see Dream Theater on the last night of their tour in New York City, and I was talking about concerts with the people I was in line with, and I said like, "Oh yeah, I was at the last Kiss show," and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, well, the, only for another year, and then I'm sure they'll be out on tour again." And I was like, "Yeah, we'll see what happens," like kind of laughing it off. And then literally like 3 days later, they announced the Vegas shows, and I'm just like, "Son of a bitch!" Like you're not helping me. And like you had said before, they're adding fuel to the fire that these people that don't like Kiss love to just keep fanning. It's like, oh, the band, Kiss, the band that's gone on 18 farewell tours, and the band that's never going to retire. And it's just like, come on, guys, like, just you're in or you're out. That's it.
I believe that they don't care. I think
No,
they
they
know
don't.
what I think they know what they're doing. I think they know it's kind of
Yeah,
goofy, and I think they just keep doing it because they keep cashing out. Every time they do
yeah,
this, they cash out, right?
yeah.
Do you think this is going to be the end of Kiss?
No, it's not, because what's going to happen is they're going to do this. They're going to see how successful it is. And one of two things are going to happen. They're going to make this a yearly thing where they'll do the Kiss convention, they'll do an acoustic show, they'll have special guests, or they'll go back out and they'll do a cruise. I don't think a cruise is really financially sustainable with this current iteration of the band of doing like out of makeup acoustic shows. I don't think there's no like big money in that in terms of going on a cruise, but I think they could definitely make something like this successful and do it, and maybe keep this going until they decide to roll out the avatars, which I feel like every time I read about that, it just keeps getting pushed back. Like I think when they did the end of the road tour, they said that the avatars were coming in 2026 maybe or
20,
something,
yeah,
like maybe.
2026 or 27, I think.
And then I remember, and then a couple months later, like, oh no, it's not going to be out till 2020. And it's like, well, who's going to care about those? Like, why announce it now if you're not going to roll it out for another, 4 to 5 years? Like, it's gonna lose momentum, and it's gonna come out. And obviously, there's going to be people that are going to pay money to go see it, but will it be worth it? Which is a whole other conversation in itself.
I agree. I don't think this is going to be the last of Kiss. I think it'd be hilarious if they took this on the road. You know what I mean? And did it in big cities.
You
That
know
would be
what?
hilarious. But I don't think it's going to be the end because they already said it's not the end. They already said,
Yeah,
we might do a Kiss cruise, we might do a residency, we might do, and like, with the hologram thing, I'll make a prediction now. They might even debut the holograms at the Vegas convention. That
you
might be a
know what?
special. That might be one of the unexpected, unforgettable moments they're talking about.
I didn't even think of that, and that's a really good prediction. Because if there's any place to do it, it would be Vegas.
Right, get the rub off before I think
Yeah,
unless something happens to Gene or Paul, I don't think this will be the end. Interestingly, I think, and God forbid, I mean, if Paul Stanley retired tomorrow completely and just said, Gene, you take Kiss and go on and do your thing, I actually think we would see Ace back in the band. I think you would see more like Ace and Vinny stuff, and maybe even I know Peter's kind of up there and he's retired, and he probably couldn't
yeah,
do like a tour. But Gene really seemed to go on a goodwill tour. This is what freaked me out about the end of the road tour was I thought all the stuff that Gene was doing with the vault leading up to the end of the road tour, I thought that was like a goodwill kind of tour
yeah.
with all the old
He did
members
this.
thinking like, wow,
Yeah,
we're getting everybody back together and we're going to do this end of the road thing and do it right, But
yeah,
it was so odd how there was that whole goodwill thing with the vault, and then as soon as the end of the road tour, it was no, screw those guys, you'll
yeah,
never see them again, which
yeah. Like
I thought was
he
bizarre.
did the thing in Nashville. He did the thing in Nashville with Vinnie Vincent, if I'm not mistaken. He did something with Ace.
He did
I
a
don't
few
know if he
things with
did it.
Ace.
I don't think he did anything with Peter.
No, Peter
I
came out. He came out to, I think, in New York. Peter came out,
Okay.
and he didn't play with Gene. So Gene had played with Vinny and Ace. Ace and Gene actually toured with their bands together. So Gene Simmons, he had the Gene Simmons band and Ace Frehley's Comet or whatever. Back before the end of the road tour, they actually did a little tour together overseas or here. I
Which
can't remember. And they jammed together on stage.
Yeah.
But the night with Peter at the vault, he came out. I think he gave Gene a hug and he endorsed the vault and kind of gave a wave and then he disappeared. So he didn't really play, but he made an appearance for Gene. I think he did Gene a favor, whatever happened there. But it really seemed like there was a goodwill thing going on. I don't think this will be, but you know, I don't think this will be the end of Kiss. Do you think they will end up playing in makeup at some point?
No.
You think the makeup's done?
Wildly enough, I think if they are going to stay true to one thing, I think they're going to stay true to the fact that that was it for the makeup and costumes, unless, you know, someone dishes out an extremely dumb amount of money and they're strapped for cash, which I don't think is ever going to happen with the way that Gene markets that band. I don't see them ever being in the makeup again.
I'd imagine Gene taking the makeup on. I can imagine him going on a Gene Simmons band tour where he's in makeup. Maybe the rest of the band isn't.
That'd be so weird though, just seeing Gene up there in like, you know, costume and makeup and then just three other guys, 3 to 4 other guys. But that was a whole other thing with Gene had the solo tour booked this summer and he canceled like 40 dates because they just weren't selling. I don't know if you had heard about that.
I had seen the tour and I actually was looking at tickets for the Niagara show. I didn't end up pulling the trigger on the tickets. And then when this was announced, I heard that they had delayed the tour because of the Kiss Vegas thing.
Yeah,
you're saying that it's because he wasn't selling tickets?
He was charging Kiss prices for a Gene solo show. That's what it was. Like, I wanted to go see him. He's playing, you know, maybe like an hour or so away from where I am. And I was like, I'm not paying $150 for a small venue to see Gene, you know, maybe do a couple deep cuts and then a bunch of other Kiss songs that I've heard 100 times already, you know? So.
Yeah. So there's that too. Yeah. At the end of the day, as a lifelong Kiss fan, like, yeah, it's cool, I guess. Like, I'd love to be there, but I do feel it's hard to say I feel like cheated because I kind of knew it even when I bought my tickets for the end of the road tour.
Yeah, exactly. It goes back to what I said at the beginning. Yeah.
It's more annoying that it makes me look a certain way as a Kiss fan. It's like, now you're giving them a reason to laugh at us.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's just like, I feel like as Kiss fans, you just like learn to become used to that, you know? It's you just become used to the constant wave of criticism that comes in towards the band, and you're just like, whatever, it is what it is. Like, at the end of the day, it's not going to change how I feel about them as a band. You know, I may be critical and have things to say about how they go about, but it's not going to change. It's not going to change my opinion on the band as a whole.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we kind of covered everything. So yeah, thanks for joining me, Brett.
Pleasure as always.
And yeah, folks, let us know what you think. Are you going to be at Kiss Storms Vegas? Or what do you think about it? Are you laughing at them? Did you check out years ago? Are you still hanging in there as a Kiss fan? Let us know. And yeah, we'll keep an eye out for more announcements. And I think there will be more announcements. I think probably Eric Singer is going to be announced. That just seems like a no-brainer. I'd be shocked if even just Ace was announced, or even Vinny or whatever. But
yeah,
you never know. I mean, they did that with the conventions. And my prediction is, like I said, I think you'll see the avatars at the show. In some way, you'll see the avatars at the show. I think they'll reveal something about the avatars. That's my big prediction. Do you have any big predictions?
No, but to kind of pack onto yours, maybe like a residency or something like that with the avatars, you know, maybe like a soft launch residency. How soon, though, I don't know. But I think maybe I once you had said it, I was like, you know what? I didn't even think of that. I think that'd be a great idea for them to roll out a sneak preview, like a legitimate sneak preview of the avatars, holograms, whatever you want to call them, at the Vegas show.
But folks, you never know. I mean, things change. We're still waiting for Kissology 4, which was promised like 15 years ago. So that's my
I think
prediction.
longer than that.
That's
Yeah.
my prediction. Kissology 4 is going to debut at the
Man.
big. I think with all that, sorry, last thing, and then we'll wrap it up. But I think with all the footage being leaked from that documentary, I think that put the nail in the coffin. I don't think Kiss has any interest in releasing any footage.
What documentary?
The A&E biography. That's how the footage was leaked. So they apparently, so this is what I had heard. I don't know if this is reality, like actually what happened, but there was the way that A&E biography was coming together. They were asking folks, fans, all kinds of people, for any footage that they had that they could use in that 2-part documentary that they did on A&E 2020, the A&E biography.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. History.
So they were getting fans and people to upload footage and photographs into like a Google Drive, but apparently there was 2-way access. And I guess some folks had figured out what was going on, and they had actually taken a bunch of footage, like the footage that was leaking onto YouTube a few years ago. So like the never before released footage from the Kiss Alive Kobo show that had never been seen, or whatever, the Largo 75 show that had never been seen in its entirety, only the encores, the Asylum show that was pro shot, 45 minutes of it or whatever. That stuff that was getting leaked.
I think there was like wasn't there some like Magic Mountain stuff that got leaked as well from the Phantom recording, I think?
Possibly. There was a bunch of stuff around that time, and I think that kind of put the nail in the coffin of Kissology 4. I think that was I think Gene and Paul had talked about maybe seeking litigation or something, but I don't know what's happened to that now. But
for legal reasons, I definitely don't have any of those things saved on a hard drive somewhere. Absolutely not.
I wouldn't know where to find them, to be honest, but because I don't think they're on YouTube anymore.
No.
But I guess we'll just we'll wrap up there, and I don't want to be incriminated. We'll wrap up there. Thanks, Brett, for joining us. That was fun. We were just having a fun chat. And we'll see what happens with the Kiss Vegas show. I'll be keeping an eye on it. Hopefully you folks will be keeping an eye on it too. If anything, it'll be some news and some discussion to come out of it. So thanks a lot, Brett, and we'll see all folks next time.
Take care, guys.